So David, when did I meet you? And I don't remember it.
I mentioned to you, my earliest recollection is we were in an elevator. I think it was at a computer conference in San Francisco, maybe, with George DeVita, you and me, and George was saying, I think we should organize something about cryptography or something, and I don't know, but we were sort of neighbors, right? I mean, well, when you had that apartment building at the edge of Berkeley, yeah.
So my first memory of you was one night, the night you introduced me to John Markoff.
Oh.
And he was investigating
That's right,
the
yeah,
question of, which is still with us, of whether the intelligence community was getting the billing records for the phones.
Yeah.
Which just struck me as the most wonderful idea. And my thoughts immediately turned to how they could do it in such a way that it would be deniable for everybody involved.
Yeah, that's Center for Investigative Reporting. Yeah, he was really very early, and then he became kind of a, technology reporter for the Times for many years, and then he wrote the book titled Machines of Loving Grace.
And so, my first substantive memory of you is that we took a long walk in 1978 in New York. We were at the National Computer Conference.
Right.
And we walked uptown, I don't know toward what objective, for 20 blocks or so. And I remember telling you my scheme for a digital traveler's check, which is you have a one-way function, and if you know the input that will produce the output that's, so to speak, written on the check.
Yes.
Now, that's my earliest awareness of your being enthusiastic about
Let me give you credit. I think that I was inspired to work on electronic money because of that conversation.
Okay.
There's no question about it. The stuff I did is a little different, of course, that's right. And I'd like to ask you if you remember. I know you probably don't exactly, but what motivated you, and the kind of things that motivated me in those days, to work on stuff to protect people from kind of the government. I mean, that's really what we were about in those days, the two of us, and that's what inspired our work in this field.
No, I unquestionably had a very decentralized view of things. And in particular, my view of a secure phone call is that no third party in the world could possibly discover what was being carried in the call.
Yes, and a lot of fundamental requirements for things, I've heard only from you, and they're inspiring. I think sometimes it's hard to meet, but tells you the right direction at least. Yeah.
So at any event, you went on. Describe how you went on from there that eventually led to DigiCash.
Oh boy, well that's a long story, but.
I have 18 minutes left.
But, around in those days, we were talking about, female reporters who understood tech, and there was a woman named Gina Colada, and I think nobody remembers her well, a catchy name, wrote for Science Magazine, and she reported, and you can see it on my website, chaum.com, that the NSA, the new director, had sent these letters to ACM and IEEE saying, you can't have conferences, you can't even have sessions on cryptography. In effect, it's board classified, and if you do, we're going to throw the full weight of the federal government at you, so don't even think about it. And being a graduate student at Berkeley at the time, and inspired by, seeing what cryptography could do to protect people and society from centralized power, because I had some early results, and I knew that the world was going to be fully digital in those days. I just couldn't see stopping work on cryptography because it's the only way to build any kind of structures in the digital world that protect people. And so I sat in my little apartment next to Berkeley campus with my girlfriend, and we, addressed these envelopes that we had, put some invitations that were printed at the place that printed the Berkeley Free Press, and I set this all up without ever using the phone. And so we dropped them in the mailbox and organized this Crypto 82 conference, which, should have put me in jail, but it didn't apparently. And the people in the front row all had the name badges saying that they were, whatever the name was, and that they lived in Laurel, Maryland, but they were here, as private individuals. And then when I said, well, lunch is at 12 and the bathrooms are over here and stuff, and I said, and your $75 in those days registration fee entitles you to, 1 year membership in the new International Association for Cryptologic Research, which you're all members of now, and we're going to be having our next event in Udine, Italy, and here Henry Becker's the program chairman, and that's going to be in 6 months. And, we're trying to get recognized by the United Nations. And so that's when all the people from Maryland turned green, and it was over. Because, so this is
Some of them came to Udine.
Oh, yeah, no, they benefited from this in terms of their exposure to global travel. But that really was, I think, really changed things, because the cat was out of there was no way to stop this, and this is very much related to, this whole event here, right? Because this is a triumph of science protecting itself against, various forces that try to impede it. And, yeah.
You mentioned the ISCR, and you
Yes,
remind
sir.
me of a question I've long had.
Oh.
Are you as pissed off as I am that you're not member number 1 and I'm not member number 2?
Are there member numbers?
Yes.
Oh, no. Yes, I am, absolutely. I founded it, but I kind of like Satoshi Nakamoto ducked out, and I wasn't Dorothy Denning, who was kind of, more on the working for the government side, but she was an academic, agreed to be president. I mean, all these, it was all set up in advance, just by personal meetings. So I'd lined up an officer slate and everything, and launched it. Yeah. So, it publishes now 2 giant journals. We have 3 flagship conferences every year around the world, and then half a dozen workshops or so.
Yeah.
Depends. Yeah. So it is the organization for cryptography globally, and it's done, I think, a tremendous amount to create a whole field, which was going to be suppressed as born classified.
Well, it has, as far as I can tell, ISCR has dropped any revolutionary attitude it had. It mostly now, is interested in its status as a scientific society.
Well, I published something about electronic money called Offline Cash with 2 people. A funny name, Amos Fiat, and the other co-author was Moni Naor.
Now,
Well, yeah, but so Fiat and Naor and Moni. And anyways, and we did all that work at the Cafe Med, where Whitfield used to drive in from the peninsula, like every morning. You'd get there at, 6 and sit at the table and yak for several hours. This is just an amazing hub. But right next door to the Med, was the Forum formerly, and that's where Thomas Kuhn wrote The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, which is, okay, there's a whole aspect to our endeavor that's maybe not really ideal, but I think things are really opening up with open access journals and whatnot. Yeah.
so let's go back to DigiCash.
Right.
As a concept and as a business, and sort of trace, it sort of, I remember you wrote a lot of papers on very elaborate signature-based ways in which you could authenticate things without anybody revealing identities.
Right.
And ultimately, as far as I know, this appeared as the DigiCash business.
Right.
And how did that go? I mean, it's gone away now, right?
Yeah. Well, that's right. So the digital cash idea that I presented at that first cryptography conference that I organized, it wasn't the first conference I could talk about, it was the first for the ICR, launch of ICR, had the unconditional information theoretic privacy, so certainly quantum secure privacy, and the Scientific American article that followed, and there was also an article that was also on the cover of the CACM, which was the premier journal of computer science at the time. It, both by invitation, was showed that sort of a generalization of that electronic money was this, what I call the credential mechanism, which is now what people think of as like what you could prove with zero knowledge. That's a longer story, but so I was sort of minding my own business after that, running was one of the top, we published more papers than anyone else. Our competitor was MIT, and I say we beat them out 6 years in a row, but according, they had a lot more. We saw the Center of Mathematics and Computer Science in the Netherlands. And anyways, the Dutch government came to me and said, we're going to have road pricing because the highways are getting too crowded here in Holland. But if we track who's going on the highway to send them bills or something like that, the people won't put those stickers on their car, and we'll basically have a revolution on our hands because they'll just start ignoring all the laws. This was what the government of the Netherlands told me, and so they said, David, we really need you to find a way for people to pay for road toll usage where they can be sure that we can't track them, and they'd come to the right place. Because I'd recently given, real quick, I should say, like an invited talk down at the Eindhoven University for the, university campus-wide talk kind of thing, general purpose. And, but there was a group of young students who kind of helped, were organizing these seminars, invited me down there, and I met, and they were all friends. And they were members of what was called the Young Scientists Club. So there was all the engineers, from Philips gave the extra old equipment to this, and the kids worked in this, they could do all this fun science stuff. And so I told them, help me build a demo of this privacy protecting highway speed road toll, 1 meter of road travel at 100 kilometers an hour, blind signature, digital cash payment, and we have only 10 days to build it, to compete, literally to prove to this consulting company that otherwise will get the contract to build this, that our system works. And I said, if you can do it, I'll send you, it was 8 guys and your girlfriends for 2 weeks to Epcot, Disney World. That was like their dream, these nerds from, it was a great group. They turned their houses that they had lived in into a lab. They worked 24/7, and we successfully did it. And so then I just went to the local bank. I said, hey, I got this contract from the government to build this stuff. They said, oh, you need money? Sure, no problem. So we just spun out a little company to do that. And then, at some point I decided to move over and run it. And then there was the first World Wide Web conference in CERN, and there were 2 keynotes, Tim and mine. And mine was first, and I sent an eCash payment from Switzerland to the Netherlands, over a web browser or whatever, and that was, reported globally. That was all over the media. So the idea that a number could be worth money was quite revolutionary, and that's when it really got out. And it was my money, but it was also inspired by Whitfield's, signatures and his early work on a kind of traveler's check as one of the use cases.
So you keep mentioning people's girlfriends. How's Ann Moose?
She's great. She's become quite an accomplished author.
Reintroduce me.
Yeah, she's been great.
Okay, so look, all this brings us up into the early 2000s. And suddenly we had Bitcoin, which as far as I can see, upstaged all previous efforts at digital cash. And your interpretation is probably different. So,
well, I mean, that's, yeah, so on the other side of town, in the last few days, and today, there is a conference called Satoshi Roundtable, where I, go from time to time. And
talked yesterday instead of watching my keynote.
Well, I presented for the first time a solution to the problem of making Bitcoin quantum secure. And that without changing the code of Bitcoin, without a fork. And so it was very well, I mean, it's an informal event there with a similar sized audience, and I gave out copies of a paper. It's not usually like that, it's more like discussion type conference. But anyways, people really liked it, and so this is now public, so it's as a kind of quantum secure signature overlay on Bitcoin, which pretty much solves the problem very effectively without having to wait the 7 years it might take to, get people in the Bitcoin community to all agree to change the code, which famously, really gets really ugly. So, a lot of the people involved in Bitcoin were at my company. My company had the whole top floor of a whole science center. We had people that were working on their own projects to develop their own kinds of electronic money. So there you see those people in the community today, and Nick Szabo, for example, and then my dissertation at Berkeley was a blockchain in '82. Also, I think it was put in the library in '83. Like 3 copies, and you can still go there and see the little checkout stickers they put on, on the books there that, when it was checked out, for how long, and so forth. And a lot of people were checking it out because it wasn't available through dissertation abstracts. It was a blockchain. It was all the code for a blockchain written in a high-level language. So I was just remarking, I called it a specification so that so that it would qualify as a dissertation, as opposed, you couldn't just publish code in those days. So, so people saw what I had done there, which was a majority-controlled networks of blockchain. So there's recently some articles about articles that show that basically I had all the elements of blockchain in there, all the different blockchains around, except the proof of work thing, which was due to the recent winner of the Japan prize. So, yeah.
Now I'm when you mentioned making Bitcoin quantum secure,
yes,
my first thought was, well, that's trivial. You just plug in the new standard algorithms, et cetera, and then you find, oh, you have to avoid a fork,
yeah.
which is very important in these things involving so much money.
Well, it's the reason, there's a guy named Roger Ver who I know a bit, and he's backed a lot of people. He's recently, got his get out of jail free card from, and I say so, he's facing a 10-year prison sentence for, being what they call Bitcoin Jesus. He published a book, it was a nearly 400-page, day-by-day account of how he suffered unfair treatment from the Bitcoin community when he tried to increase the block size. And, and he's a tough guy. He's a jiu-jitsu champion, and all this stuff. And it really took a toll on him. And this took years, this war took years and years. And the ironic thing to me is that in the end, even though the big miners agreed, the war was over, many of them didn't actually implement the agreed solution. And so in the end, it didn't amount to much. So no one in the Bitcoin community feels like, you can get everyone to agree to make a change that's in our benefit. I see a countdown, and I'd like to just mention one thing. Absolutely. In the closing minute, and that is, to me, one of, we're now at, AI is something that could help us govern ourselves, and a technology that came out of academic research for which I received a prize, which is the ACM most influential paper over the last 30 years prize in theoretical computer science. It's given by the editors, the program chairmen for the Fox conference over the last 30 years. They all had to decide what was the most influential. The first time they gave it to my paper on multi-party computation. And multi-party computation, which is also quantum resistant, is the very fundamental theorem. We've proved it constructively and tight way that, if you have a majority of honest people, then participants, then without any other assumptions, or just statistically, information theoretically, we showed how you could prove that an agreed algorithm was being conducted with secrets that don't leak out, that it had access to from every participant, and that its results were correct, and that it never revealed information improperly. And so this might, instead of the Turing thesis, this is the Chaum thesis is that this proves that any information theory, any information security problem can be solved in principle, so long as that problem makes sense, is self-consistent.
You've counted down. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wiz, for everything. Well, I can't thank you enough.